In Pixar's Turning Red, May's mother Ming had a heartbreaking story of her own that really helped to explain her character's personality better. Despite trying her best to be a good daughter, Ming ended up doing something that hurt her family and shook up her entire life. Ming's childhood shaped her into a woman who wanted nothing more than to be a good mother and to have her daughter get the best she could out of life. But somewhere down the line, she became the very thing that she never wanted to be, and in turn almost pushed her daughter away from her forever. Now, the curse of the red panda had plagued Ming's family for generations, though it was originally seen as a blessing. And much like the majority of her ancestors in recent history, Ming tried to run from her panda after she supposedly almost destroyed half the temple. That wasn't always the case, though. Originally, the gift of being able to combine one's spirit with a red panda was a blessing that allowed Sun Yi to save her family. It was during a different time period, and according to the story, all of the men were at war, which left the village unprotected. Sun Yi made a deal with the gods, who granted her wish. From that moment on, all the women in their ancestral line could eventually harness their emotions and transform into powerful red pandas. And during that time period, having that power was a blessing that likely kept a lot of people in their village safe. But as times changed and Ming's ancestors decided to travel to North America, as Ming tells it, what was a blessing became an inconvenience. Lucky for them, there was a ritual that could be used to seal away the red panda's spirit, and as you know, that's what the most recent generation of Ming's family did. However, because of the fear and oppression of the red panda, Ming was forced to grow up in a way that would cause her to seemingly despise her mother. Ming's mother Wu had a strong presence about her. Even when she was merely talking to her daughter on the phone, you could see how stressed out Ming was. And the fact that merely hearing her mother's voice over the phone caused Ming so much distress proves that she didn't have the fondest memories of Wu and her parental decisions. That's probably because of how strict Wu was. In Turning Red, Grandma Wu was shown to be a very strict disciplinarian who was able to take over any house she stepped foot into. I mean, as soon as she showed up at Ming's house, it was as if Wu was the boss in charge. So, thinking about what it must have been like to actually grow up in Wu's house is borderline horrifying. Ming likely had to deal with a very strict schedule, one that would make the one that she had for May seem like a cakewalk, and she probably had to behave in a very specific way. I highly doubt there was any arguing or talking back in Wu's home, and Ming probably couldn't even question her mother's ways without receiving some sort of punitive disciplinary action. And on top of that, Ming didn't even have any siblings to help support her through the struggles that she was dealing with. Sure, she had a couple of cousins and aunts that she could relate to, but none of them had the same relationship that Ming had with Wu. So it wouldn't be surprising if Wu's strictness led Ming to try to raise her own daughter differently. Sadly though, if you've seen the movie, you'll remember that it didn't quite work out that way in the end. Now, Ming trying to raise her daughter May differently than how she grew up wasn't the first time that she did something that was considered a defiance to her mother. In fact, the first time it happened might have been the very incident that scarred Ming mentally, and Wu literally. While it wasn't confirmed in the movie, its fans heavily speculate that the scar on Wu's face came from the supposed attack that happened when Ming's red panda made an appearance long before she had May. According to her husband Jin, who told May the story of what happened, Ming and her mother were arguing over him when Ming lost control. And according to him, her red panda was much larger than anyone else in her family. She was so angry that Ming practically tore the temple in half. But the important thing to remember here is the reason why they were arguing in the first place. According to May's father, they were arguing over him, which sounded like Wu was trying to possibly keep Ming from dating or even marrying him. And if that's true, then Wu was not only strict, but she was straight up controlling. That being said, Ming clearly didn't mean to hurt her mother when she turned into her panda form, and the fact that she did was something that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. The movie showed that she feared that she would push May away in the same way that Wu pushed her away, and that's the last thing Ming wanted, so that's why she tried to change. Little did she know that her childhood would come full circle, and in her attempt to change, she became the exact person she was trying to avoid becoming. Ming did her best though. She tried to be less strict about May's life, in a way. But that's the paradox that usually happens in movies and in real life to an extent. Whenever a character tries their hardest to resist becoming something, they often end up becoming that very thing. An amazing example of this is the character Maleficent. Multiple sources, including the live-action film and the book Mistress of All Evil by Serena Valentino, showed that Maleficent never wanted to be evil. She tried her best to fight it, but the world was too cruel to her, and eventually she became the very evil thing that she had tried to avoid. And the same can be said for Ming, except for the fact that Ming wasn't really a villain. Instead, she was simply trying to resist controlling Mei as Wu did to Ming, while also trying to control her own imperfections that she believed her mother saw in her growing up. In the end, Ming oppressed her daughter in the same way that she was controlled when she was younger. She put Mei on a strict schedule, though she didn't see it that way, and Ming clearly pressured her into acing all of her academic classes. Of course, that's not to say that doing well in school is bad and shouldn't be pushed, but it also seemed like Mei wasn't allowed to have any free time. Right after school, she had to get to work at the temple, and then after that it was dinner time, followed by studying and homework. She hardly even seemed to have time to spend with her best friends, and whether Ming meant it or not, that's a form of control, and it's almost exactly what Wu did to her. As you would expect, the movie eventually showed Ming's deepest fear coming true when she discovered that Mei had been working behind her back and using the Red Panda spirit to earn money for Four-Town tickets. She had pushed her daughter away in a manner that reminded her of what happened all those years ago. Ming became exactly what she was trying to resist. This was the breaking point for Ming, and after Mei ditched the Red Moon ritual to go to the concert, her mother's rage took over again. Only this time it made Ming's panda much larger than usual. Now, you might be wondering how or why I would think that Ming's panda was bigger than it usually was, and that's because the movie gave us a glimpse of its actual size that was really easy to miss. When all of Mei's family members were resealing their spirits after they saved Ming, you get a brief glimpse at their size, and even though Ming's was still significantly larger than the rest of her family, it wasn't the size of a building like it was when she was terrorizing the Four-Town concert. That means that when Jin explained to Mei about her mother's red panda spirit being much larger than the rest of the pandas in her family, he probably didn't mean that she was big enough to destroy towns. However, when she transformed toward the end of the movie, Panda Ming was basically the size of Godzilla. Well, there's a good chance that her panda grew so large based on how angry she was. After all, in the lore of the red panda spirit, Ming did say that they could harness their emotions. In other words, Ming was so upset that her daughter disobeyed her, she gave in and unleashed all of her rage when the panda spirit came out. Thus, she ended up becoming the very thing that she was afraid of, a massive, controlling red panda. The cool thing here, though, is that by the end of the movie, Ming did help change the ways of her family dynamic by being so accepting of her daughter's choice to keep her red panda spirit. That's something that I'm not sure Wu would have done willingly. You could tell by the way that she acted when she first came into the film that Wu was very set in her ways, and anyone or anything that disagreed with those ways couldn't be bothered. So if Mei was her daughter, she might not have let Mei stay bonded with her red panda spirit. Instead, Wu would likely have done anything she possibly could to force Mei to seal it up. Ming, on the other hand, even though it took some time and self-realization, eventually came around to the idea of Mei controlling her panda spirit, and they even started using it to promote the temple. So I know Mei gets a lot of credit for changing the way her family viewed the red panda, but her mother Ming definitely deserves some credit too, because she tried her best to change as well. She just got trapped in a paradox of her own choices along the way. The only thing left to wonder about is what Ming's life was like after the ending of Turning Red. She seemed happier and her relationship with Mei seemed stronger, but do you think that will last? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below.